Hi there BookTube, I'm sharing another weekly wrap-up with you guys today, and I read 3 books this week. The first book I read was Nowhere But Here by Katie McGarry, and this is a book about 17-year-old Emily who has a nice life with her wonderful adoptive father and slightly overdramatic but still loving mother and good friends and nice school life and living in a very safe little haven in Florida. But then her biological father's mother dies, and Emily is forced to go to the funeral by her mother. And while that doesn't sound very bad, it turns out that the visit changes Emily's life in more ways than she wanted, since her biological father is part of a motorcycle club, and all of a sudden she is sucked into that kind of world and life and doesn't really get a choice but to take part in it for a few weeks. And since it's a romance, there is of course also a boy involved. This book was a bit of a surprise for me, which isn't the book's fault, but my own, because I didn't expect to have this very real and great plot and great writing and wonderful characters and a real story outside of the motorcycle club or the romance. We actually get all that in this book, and it was fantastic. I loved how much this book focuses on Emily and her parents and her grandparents and their relationship. And while there is a romance between Emily and the boy, and it is a running theme throughout this book, it is not the main thing the author decided to focus on, and I love that because I just thought that the plot of Emily and her family and what they are going through and how Emily is trying to figure out what her family is keeping secret from her was so much more interesting than any kind of romance could have been. So all in all, this book was great and completely different from what I expected, and I really enjoyed it, and I will definitely recommend it if you want a book that is not the typical YA romance story but something completely different and wonderfully written. And since I enjoyed the first book of this Thunder Road series so much, I just decided I move right along and read the second book, and that was Walk the Edge by Katie McGarry. And this book follows 2 different characters, but one of them, because we were introduced to Razor in the first book, and the first book's main characters also have a small role in Walk the Edge. This book is about the 17-year-old who is the smart and responsible one in the large family of 9 children until she becomes the victim of cyberbullies and gets unexpected help from Razor, the member of the motorcycle club we learned about in the first book. This book was even better for me than the first book was, because there were just so many little details that I really appreciated and loved that Katie McGarry included that in a book. I love that both Brennan and Razor were very smart. It really works, and I love that you have 2 smart characters together. I also love that in this book, Brennan and her siblings do love each other, but they also hate each other. That might sound very strange, because they fight and they don't make Brennan's life easy at all. I just found it really refreshing and great to see a sibling relationship in a book that was not this perfect, we always love each other and we always have each other's backs kind of thing, because how realistic is that, honestly? Yes, you love your siblings, but you hate them too sometimes. Siblings have this very deep knowledge of each other, and we always know which buttons to push, and I don't really love the books that have this overly done perfect relationship and this lovey-dovey stuff between siblings, because yes, that happens too, but most times siblings just know exactly what to say to drive the other one wild, so it was just wonderful to see that kind of relationship between siblings in a book. The romance was great as well. Brennan and Razor didn't just start out jumping each other, but at the beginning this relationship was more about Brennan being scared of Razor because of his connection to the motorcycle club, which I found very realistic, because how many people see motorcycle gang members running around in the cuts and on their bikes and just think, wow, that is the safest guy you ever met. It is unfair and it is judgmental, but it is how it is. You see guys like that and you get scared. And so I found it very realistic to have Brennan be scared of them. Razor was just lovely. He was such a huge, big, cuddly bear, and I loved that Razor showed her that just because he's part of this motorcycle club doesn't mean that he's a mass murderer. And I just really love this book and really recommend this book and the series, since both books were just wonderful and you guys should read it. And the last book I read was Jacobi by William Ritter. This is a paranormal retelling of Sherlock Holmes set in America. We have a female Watson named Abigail Rook and the male differently named Sherlock named Jacobi, and Abigail gets a job with Jacobi as his assistant, and the story involves around the the two of them trying to figure out this paranormal murder mystery. This book was fun. It was written nicely and easy to read, and I did enjoy the paranormal aspects that were thrown in. It really reminded me a lot of the BBC series Sherlock, where Sherlock Holmes is constantly running around and doing unexplainable things, and Watson runs behind him and trying to figure out what the heck Sherlock is doing and trying to make sure that nobody gets hurt in the process, which is basically the relationship between Abigail and Jacobi. Since Jacobi is running around doing his own thing, trying to figure out why this paranormal stuff is happening the way it is happening, and the people around him are just trying to figure out if he is crazy, just behaving very strangely, or if they should call for the people with the straitjackets to come and lock him away. All the while, Abigail is running around behind him trying to figure out what is going on as well. While all that is fine and interesting and fun to read about, all this running around make the story feel very rushed and sometimes slightly confusing, because we don't get a huge amount of explanations of what is happening and how this paranormal aspects of this book work. We get thrown into the moments, and then we get a short snippet of what is happening, and the story is already running along and moving on and moving forwards. And I just would have loved it if this book would have been a bit longer, if it would have slowed down just a smidget, and to give a bit of a better explanation about what is happening and why it is happening and all of that. But overall, it was a nice read, and I will be continuing on with this series or trilogy or whatever this book is the first thing of. And that was it. I would love to hear if you guys read any of the books I just talked about and what you thought about them, or if you plan to read any of them and haven't yet, or if you heard about them now and just think that is not for me. I would love to talk to you. So let's chat in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye. And that was it. And well